joining us. And I am going to begin recording this from here on out so that we can capture it for anybody that's missed the meeting today. So Paul?
Yeah, well, thank you, Laura. I know we have a presentation. There's a lot of information to be shared today, so I want to thank ODOT for being here today. A lot of stuff going on in transportation funding. I think really within the next few years, there's a very potential for a big paradigm shift in transportation funding. What you're going to hear today is just a part of that. There's some other things that are going on, and I'll probably have more to say at the chamber meeting on Wednesday. But you know, right now we're just trying to get our arms around the new board and work through a few things and hopefully get ourselves on a path for getting some good work done this year. Coming out of the ice storm, coming out of the fire, the forest fire situation, it's been a traumatic year. We're hoping that businesses can get back open with the fact that we went from extremely high risk to now moderate risk, and hopefully with vaccinations we can get back to normalcy sometime soon. A lot going on, but I don't want to take away from the presentation today, so I'll just stop there and just thank everyone for being present today.
Great. And thank you, Paul. We appreciate everything that you're doing for the county and keeping things running smoothly. So great leadership. So thanks for everything that you do. And real quick, I'm going to go ahead and do a share screen for us. So bear with me for a second. And while I'm opening this, I want to make sure to remind everybody that Wednesday is the State of the County Forum Luncheon. Whoop, hang on a minute. Is the State of the County. It's going to be at noontime. And give me a thumbs up, Paul, if you can see the presentation. Okay, thanks. Just easier since your face is right on the top of my screen. All right, so I would love to have our ODOT team. Della, do you want to take it from here and you guys can start the presentation?
Absolutely. Appreciate you being willing to manage the slide deck for us, Laura.
Oh, of course.
Thrilled to be here today and joined by my partner in crime, as we call it, Brendan Fenn, who's the director of the Urban Mobility Office. Like I mentioned before, Mandy unfortunately had a conflict, wasn't able to be here, so I'll do my best to fill in her shoes. But between Brendan and Lucinda and I, we should be able to answer most of your questions, I think. So with that, I'll turn it over to my boss, Brendan Fenn, to kick us off here. So go ahead, Brendan.
Great. Thank you, Della. Thank you, Laura, Commissioner Stavis, members of the committee. Thank you for having us here. Yes, we are well represented. Got a good portion of the team here from the Urban Mobility Office. And I think many of you have heard this, our little tagline. We say the process is the project, and that's precisely why we're here. I know some of the faces I've seen on the screen. We've shared a few of these over the last year because it's so important for us to get out and talk about what we're doing around, in particular, the Comprehensive Congestion Management and Mobility Plan, which I'll go over here shortly with you. So, Laura, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. So this map has changed a little bit over the course of time. We've had some pieces come on and drop off based on what happened in the bond measure. I know we've worked hard with Clackamas County on making sure that whatever we do regarding this plan and the iterations that will continue to present themselves, that we're staying in close coordination and making sure we're, again, taking advantage of opportunities and making sure whatever system we create is going to increase the mobility and decrease congestion in the region. And we know how important that is based on the conditions and the options that are available in North Clackamas County. So that's something that I know the commissioner has ingrained in my mind ever since he and I sat on the Value Pricing Steering Committee. I think that was about three and a half years ago, where I got to learn a lot at the time working for the city of Portland, representing them there at that table about the needs, the transportation needs in Clackamas County. And since that time, worked with a lot of the folks that are here today on learning more. And we're committed as an office to showing up frequently, we're going to keep showing up and listening and making sure that we're taking in everything we're hearing about those conditions. But just in a broad sense, for those that haven't heard our roadshow before, House Bill 2017 was signed by the governor in 2017 to give ODOT a set of tools and also a set of projects that address some of the biggest transportation needs we have in the region on the state system in particular. Some of these bottleneck projects are some of the worst congestion freight routes in the country. I'm forgetting where 205 is now. If Mandy was here, she could kick me under the table or at least tell me the number where it is nationally. I know that Rose Quarter has creeped into the top 20 in the United States freight bottlenecks. So this strategic set of investments that came out of HB 2017 is to deal with these bottleneck issues and deal with some of the seismic resiliency issues that we have through our region, and of course addressing some really big safety needs. But one of the things that we're doing with this plan, and which the legislature and the OTC have given us direction on, is to think comprehensively. And what I mean by that is, since DOT started getting into this business in the last half of the last century, it's been about projects. And what we've learned from that time is what happens when you focus in on projects is you push the problem to another place. So we're getting away from that philosophy and moving towards one that's more of a holistic one that looks at the entire system. So we're going to make these investments an important one that I know is near and dear to the many hearts on this screen, as far as the I-205 and Abernathy Bridge projects, is to create a uniform system. That system will then, and with the other investments, be nested underneath the toll program, which we have Lucinda here to talk about. And that toll program will have two main components, which you'll probably hear Lucinda say as well. And we've talked to a lot of our partners to generate revenue, to make these investments in these important projects, and also be used as a tool to manage demand of the system. So that is kind of our overarching plan that we've done. As you can see, there's different portions on this as far as other investments that are being made. We're going to do those in collaboration with our regional partners, as we continue will do, and we're going to look for other sources of revenue outside of the toll program to make these investments. I think I said in a meeting the other night with Mr. Lyons there, we're going to look under every couch cushion and make sure we put in all the effort we can to see the I-205 project a priority for us be funded. So with that, I want to turn it over to Della, who will get a little bit more into the implementation and financial plan and the schedule. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Laura. I'll turn it over to Della, and apologies that I will have to drop at 12:30, but you have a great representation of the team here. So if I can answer questions before then, I will. But with that, I want to turn it over to Della.
All right, well, thank you, Brendan. As Brendan mentioned, the focus of the comprehensive congestion management mobility plan is to look at improvement projects holistically, as well as not just the car-centric sort of improvements, but also incorporating bike ped and transit opportunities. And when you look at the map that Brendan just covered, you'll see key bike ped planning projects and/or actual projects that are part of some of the bigger projects. So, for instance, on Rose Quarter, the Clackamas Bike Ped Bridge is a significant investment into different modes. We have here on this map a nod to the Southwest Corridor project, which is the second one from the bottom. So we are looking at this all quite multimodally, as well as strategically looking at the opportunity to leverage the toll program into allowing us not only to generate revenue, but to be able to manage demand on the system by turning those knobs up and down as in order to be able to improve travel time, reliability, and those sorts of things. So, and Lucinda will talk about that more. But for what you see here, this is the sort of investment and implementation portfolio for the CCMMP, and it's really born out of using all the tools that the legislature gave us in House Bill 2017, which was included funding for the Rose Quarter project. We are working closely with the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, which is being led by Greg Johnson. And that work reports directly to ODOT's director, Chris Strickler, as well as WashDOT's secretary, Roger Millar. And Greg Johnson and team are doing a good job of getting that work going. They're in the environmental phase here now, and we know that going forward as they develop that project more, we'll have a better idea of cost, but want to make sure that folks know that we're considering what the effects will be systematically once that project goes forward. And we have the I-205 project, phase 1 and phase 2. So full extents are from Stafford Road to OR 213. And then we have programmatic tolling implementation, which Lucinda will talk about more. We've included the I-5 Boone Bridge and Seismic Improvement Project as part of our look at system-wide tolling, again, to generate revenue, to be able to build a project like Boone Bridge, as well as be able to manage congestion from sort of river to river through the toll program. And then, as I mentioned previously, the Southwest Corridor Light Rail project on hold for now, but as you look at this schedule kind of out in the future, this reflects an agreement between ODOT and the city of Portland for jurisdictional transfer of Barber Boulevard to support that project. And then we have a series of operational projects that we're looking at to help, again, improve reliability and safety on the system as we continue forward. So that can be investments like intelligent transportation system investments, real-time driver feedback signs, as well as some auxiliary lanes or exit or on-ramp lanes to help operational improvements. The big thing I would ask you to focus on here on this map is just to notice the purple and the orange. So the orange shows projects that are headed to construction. The purple shows when we think we would be able to bond against toll revenue. And so you'll see that as the purple starts to come online, more orange becomes possible. And the projects that we see being able to come online and move into the orange are the phase 2 of the I-205 project, as well as the Boone Bridge project and the operational projects. So that's kind of how those are tied together, considering that the Rose Quarter project has bonded funds that were assigned to that project from the legislature. And then we are working in the very early stages of demonstrating or starting to identify the connections between the toll revenue, as well as being able to program the phase 1 project for construction in the end of 2021. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions for Brendan before he escapes, and before I take a deeper dive into the 205 project. So thoughts or questions on any of this for Brendan or I before we move on? All right. Not seeing any or hearing any. So we will.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any, and I don't see any hands raised. And guys, I can't see all of your faces on the screen doing a share screen. So if you do have a question, type it in the chat box or put your name in the chat box and I'll call on you that way. It'll help. Lisa Davidson. In Clackamas County, I-205 is the only freeway option. Please address the equity concern that those who have a higher income can afford to use the limited freeway system, but those who don't must use surface roads.
You know, I can jump in here on this and tee it up. I'll really be looking to our toll program director, Lucinda Broussard, to probably lean in on the details of answering this question. But, you know, as we're setting up a toll program in Oregon and one that works for all Oregonians, we have identified that the need for a deep dive on equity and really coming up with a program that provides accessible transportation options for all users, and that includes folks who can't afford to pay the higher fees to use a limited freeway system. So with that, Lucinda, would you be willing to jump in
Sure.
on this one?
Sure, not a problem. So as Della was saying, we do have an Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee that's kind of looking at one of the purviews they'll look at is affordability for sure. But we're also talking about transit and multimodal, not just a discount on a toll rate, but other options or modes of travel. So we're looking at all of that. We don't have the answers right now, but they're all out on the plate right now. So great question, and thank you.
The only thing I would add to that as well is just that this is something, probably one of the more important questions we're going to have to answer with all of the communities in the region. We were checking in with PBOT Commissioner of Transportation, Commissioner Hardesty this morning. It's the #1 issue for her. So I think it's something that's going to be one of those shared values throughout the region, one that we're going to keep showing up on, and Lucinda and her team are keeping at the forefront. But I guess I just wanted to mention that, and I've talked to colleagues across the country that are looking to implement similar systems beyond just the status quo tolling systems, and that is the #1 issue, is the equity issue. So I just think that that'll be shared and something we'll give a lot of attention to, I guess I would like to say as director of the office.
All right, great. Well, before we step off the slide, I'd just like to also point out that the proposal for the strategy is spread out over about 15 years. And right now we're really just in the first year. And so as we move the toll program forward, we'll get updated information related to the funds that can be generated from tolls, and then refined costs for the investments that are shown on here will still be being developed over the next several years. Then beyond, that technical homework, we'll also be working with our partners, communities, and stakeholders at the direction of the commission to look at the toll corridor limits, the corridor definitions, and how the net toll revenue can be used on the corridor. We'll also want to ensure we take the time, as Brendan and Lucinda emphasized, to have intentional conversations around how equity and climate goals also match up with all of these investments. So with that, we can go to the next slide. All right. So this slide here shows the I-205 construction improvements project. This project will create a 7-mile earthquake-ready corridor between Stafford Road and OR 213. It will improve safety and significantly reduce congestion in this bottleneck area. The Abernathy Bridge and 8 other bridges will be reinforced or replaced to meet modern seismic standards. 2 construction phases are planned, shown here in yellow and blue. And if you don't mind, we'll note that we have heard from our contracting community that there is a desire for some smaller contract bundles for each phase. So when you look at the price of the phase 1 project, on the first page, I think it's 410 to 460 million. Together, the 2 phases total, and that's not just for construction, it's for design, right away, all the permitting, all the work that has to happen prior to going to construction. But the total program costs around $600 to $700 million for both phases. And so as we've been talking with the construction industry, they're interested in the first phase being broken down into a couple, 2 or 3 smaller bundles. And so we're working on that with our community to ensure that there's a strong and broad bidding environment for the significant amount of work for Oregon DOT that we're putting out here, hopefully in the fall. And then back to phase 1, the yellow section of this map includes Abernathy Bridge, the Oregon 43 interchange improvements, and the addition of a general purpose lane in each direction. The project in phase 1 will make seismic improvements to the Abernathy Bridge and construct an additional lane in each direction between 10th and OR 213. rock blasting and removal will take place in this phase to remove the slope on the northbound side between Sunset Avenue and the Oregon 43 interchange. We'll also widen the Main Street Bridge, remove the Broadway Bridge, and replace the West A and Sunset bridges. There'll be the Oregon 43 interchange reconfiguration. Also extend the northbound auxiliary lane from 99E to OR 213. And then add in a real-time travel information sign at Sunset Avenue. There may also be a sound wall near exit 9 in Oregon City. And so we're sending that out to the sound wall vote later this spring to get feedback on the possible sound wall in that area. If we go to the phase 2, which is the blue section of the map, this includes seismically enhanced bridges on 205 between Stafford and 10th Street, at the Tualatin River, Borland Road, Blankenship, and Woodbine Road. Also adds a multi-purpose lane on I-205 between 10th and Stafford Road. And then the I-205 bridge replacements that will meet the current seismic standards. It also includes 2 sound walls and then another real-time travel and information sign northbound at Johnson Road. Could we go to the next slide, please? The schedule shows a pretty aggressive schedule for the team. We have all hands on deck this year to allow us to be ready to bid the phase 1 of the project for late 2021. This allows us to take advantage of the in-water work window around the Abernathy Bridge in the spring of 2022. And in the next few months, we'll increase our outreach and engagement with local partners like you, project area residents and businesses, the broader traveling project, and industry groups. We plan to reach 90% design in April and have final plans later this summer. We'll be working to confirm our detour routes, rock handling specifics, and determine if the 3rd sound wall will be included in the project. And these are all key topics for community conversations as we look to finalize the plans. Mandy and the team are meeting regularly with Westland and Oregon City staff to work on the details of pre-construction planning. There's a lot going on this year, but the team is very excited about this work. Got a great consultant team supporting the ODOT staff and really strong, committed regional partners on this project and this effort. So with that, I'll stop to see if there are questions, comments here before we move on to a deeper dive on the toll program.
Yeah, Della, it looks like, so Lori Oland with Miles Fiberglass is asking, do you anticipate any money coming in from the federal infrastructure bill? And have you talked with our congressman for what we could anticipate acquiring?
So we are looking at submitting an infra grant for the I-205 construction project, and Mandy and Region 1 are working closely to see about putting that proposal together. As if folks are close to that, that just came out, I think, last week, and the deadline is March 19th. So it's the fastest turnaround I've ever seen in my 11 years of infra grant submittals. But we do have a previous version of the infra grant for this project, probably work to update it to include the ties to the toll program based on the views of the current folks who will be scoring and reviewing these proposals. But we are looking at that opportunity, and I think by next week we'll for sure be able to say thumbs up or thumbs down on the submittal, but I'm optimistic that we will get there to be able to make that ask. I think as far as, I'll just assume the question has something to do around earmarks. I think a lot of that is still forming itself up. We have Trevor Sleeman in our government affairs office has been closer to the conversations with our federal legislators. And I think they're still forming, what that might look like and what sort of criteria, interest, or focus those programs will have. So probably, by the summer, we'll have a much better idea. But we are, again, as Brendan said, looking under every couch cushion and opportunity that we have to help look for funding opportunities for the I-205 project.
That sounds good. And Della, I guess I'd ask the question, you mentioned a couple slides ago when we were talking about the tolling, you mentioned the net in some of the revenue generated. So have you guys anticipated, I mean, what do some of the numbers look like? Have you guys anticipated what the potential income or revenue from something like this, like tolling I-205 as an example? And then what that net would look like that would go to pay for the improvements?
I will take a stab at this and then definitely defer to Lucinda. I think if the numbers that we've come up with and the schedule that we've come up with have been through a very high level conceptual projection on potential toll revenue. We have more folks under contract looking to refine those revenue numbers. But as far as being able to say, this is absolutely how much money there will be, I think we're a ways off before we'll have those reports in. So this, like I mentioned, we're in the first year of a 15-year marathon. We're letting y'all under the hood and behind the curtain to see what we're thinking. We really don't have this perfectly formulated yet. A lot more information and homework is ahead of us. But we are trying to make sure that as we do get that information, we've had the opportunity to talk with everyone and know what the region supports, so that as we can take advantage of that additional information, we can make some real-time good decisions and start getting some projects going. So with that, I will turn it to Lucinda, who knows much more about those details.
Yeah, so we're talking about net toll revenue, which is different than what Della was talking about for tolls that would support this project. So that's previous to the net toll revenue. So the idea that tolls will help pay for this project is before net toll revenue comes out. Does that help? Cool. Any other questions before I get started? Good. Next slide, please. So again, good afternoon, Lucinda Broussard. I'm the toll program director. I'm going to kind of take it from what we've been doing out on I-205, and then I'm going to bring it all the way up to the the Comprehensive Congestion Management and Mobility Plan that we affectionately call the CCAMP or the CCMMP. It's a very long name, so I will try to refer to it as the Comprehensive Plan. We did an engagement on the I-205 actually tolling project. So we went out during, that was back in August through October. It was 75 days long. And we asked some questions about our alternatives, different ways that we could toll out on the I-205. And we are looking at tolling all lanes in both directions. And tolling would encompass congestion management, which is really just under tolling. It's just an application of tolling. So we would do congestion management, and then of course the revenue generation piece too, all under the umbrella of tolling. But we went out and we asked, I would say everyone, we received about 4,600 responses about the alternatives, where we should put toll gantries, the goals and objectives, and of course our purpose and need, why we would even do the project. We took it back from kind of looking back. There was a feasibility analysis policy group that happened back in 2017 that Brendan was actually talking about, where he sat next to Commissioner Savas. And we tried to take what happened there, what were the comments then, and then we kind of mapped those to what were the comments we received now. And they were very similar. Same things, low income, what happens to people, what happens with diversion, what happens with transit. And of course, the new one now is COVID, because COVID was not back in 2017. And I want to say thank you for that. And I can't wait till we get over it now. But those concerns are still the same concerns that people are having now. And what we tried to do was, how are we addressing them? So number one, our engagement, where we went out, who we tried to reach, how we're trying to address all of the issues or concerns that we've heard about from the beginning. I will say that through all of this, one of the sentiment that we heard of the majority was no tolls. which was an expectation. I don't think that anybody raises their hands for tolls. But with tolls paying for a project like I-205, it kind of opens it up a little bit more. Are you willing to pay for what you receive? And that would be the infrastructure pieces that Della was talking about. Next slide, please. We also did presentations to, I want to call it our partners and other jurisdictions. And as you can see, we were really, I like the 2 slides. I wish we could superimpose them at some point. Here's where we did the briefings and here's where we received comments from. And you can see the project area, Westland, Oregon City definitely came out and responded. So we received about 4,600 comments. Which is really good. What we were trying to do is not only receive a lot of comments, but also receive comments from people we normally do not reach. Because one of the things when we're talking about equity is actually asking the question, what is the need? And then how do we fulfill the need of the people that we impact? And you can't do that if you don't talk to people. So one of our goals was to get people to the table that we normally don't hear from. And we did that through, we had a lot of ways that we tried to do it. I would say that we've learned a lot, and virtually I would say it's harder than it seems, because people have to come to you online. They have to reach out to you versus being at a community fair where you can reach out to others. So I think we'll do better. We've learned a lot, but trying to reach communities and finding out what exactly are the needs of those communities, where we would be impacting them with tolls, and then how we come back together with some mitigation or some ideals and having them at the table as we discuss. Next slide, please. Yep, back one. Back one. I think we went 2 slides up. There, thank you. So when we did community engagement, as I said, we were really trying to reach communities we normally don't talk to. We did have an online survey, online open house. We also did a bunch of print. We did Spanish radio. I would say our big and really our big focus, and I think a place where we can learn a lot from and we'll be using more of, is our community engagement liaisons. And these are people in your community, in other communities, who in their own native language get together with their sphere of influence and they talk about the program. They were able to take the survey. They were also able to look at the survey and say, your translation of what we translated it word for word. And as I think it's a great lesson to learn is that word for word does not mean the same in someone else's language as it does in English. So, we learned from that, and next time you'll see that we'll have it will be an identical site, but it will definitely have words that mean the same thing. So how we reach out, I think that is one of the, it's kind of one of the hallmarks of what you're going to see for toll program as we go out, reaching people we normally don't talk to and trying to get them to the table to talk about transportation and its impacts on them. As Della I'm just going to stay on this slide, but as Della and Brendan both talked about, they talked about this comprehensive. So this was the I-205 project specifically. And comprehensive is on top of this. So we'll be doing this I-205 project, toll project. And in addition, we'll be doing the comprehensive. And the comprehensive includes North Going Street all the way to Boone Bridge. That would be the I-5 portion. And then I-205 at either end from OR 213 to Glen Jackson, and then from Stafford Road to I-5. So that's when we're talking about comprehensive congestion management. It's literally regional, a system that will be doing tolling, and our application will be congestion management. So in talking about, I think Della mentioned, we have a toll program to put up. We have I-205. We also have Rose Quarter. There are a lot of things going on in there, but we are not just tolling. We are doing congestion management. And the way we are doing that is it's literally laying tolls over the whole region. And we'll be doing that by variable pricing, which means if it's peak time, it costs more. Off peak is less. So when you think about trying to, I always call it smoothing off the curves. There's a lot of people who go during, morning congestion is very heavy. And how do you smooth out the curve? And that is what tolling does with the variable rates. Next slide, please. I think that I actually had it's okay. I was going to say I could probably talk through it. So after receiving the 4,600 comments, by the end of this month, we will be responding to all those comments, and they will be like in a summary form, not 4,600 specific, but definitely will capture all the main ideas. We post everything on our website. So you'll see it on our website, all the responses. We're also going to continue with the I-205, the OR 213 to Stafford Road. National Environmental Policy Act, which is why we went out with those comments. That one continues as we start the I-5, which was the Boone Bridge all the way up to North Going, and then the rest of the 205 in that comprehensive tolling, which is called Planning and Environmental Linkages. You'll hear people refer to it as a PEL. That work will start too. So we will be in parallel doing both projects, but they'll be at different stages. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And as I'm here to answer questions for sure.
Thank you very much, Lucinda. Good detail. So is there any other questions from the audience? It's awfully quiet for this group. No? Okay. So I guess there's a lot more from what you're saying, though. I think there's a little bit more information that's going to be coming that will help us to stay up to speed on what's happening, especially around when we were talking about the affordability equity and making sure that this is really a robust program that will accommodate different people. So it looks like, hang on, some other folks typed in while I was talking. So another question is, when we first heard about the tolling option, we heard that the revenue generated would be used for specific projects and then eliminated. It sounds like we are now expecting tolling to provide revenue for ongoing transportation projects. No plans to eliminate. Also, will funds raised through tolling I-205 be used for I-205 projects, or will the funds be used regionally? That's one question. And then there's another, but we'll wait till you answer that. So
Okay, I'm going to pick off some of this. Della, I'm going to ask that you pick off others of this because I've only been here a year. So there's some history I don't really have. I do know, like, elimination, that would be determined by Oregon Transportation Commission. And at this point, that has not been determined if tolls were going to be just to pay for a project and then go away. When we're talking about, well, tolls raised on I-205, in September, we went to the Oregon Transportation Commission, and one of the questions or one of the policies that we got out of that was that tolls collected on a corridor would stay on that corridor. So tolls collected on I-205 would stay on I-205 technically. Actually, Della talked a little bit about that, getting together with the partners and talking about what those boundaries are, what is a corridor, and defining that. So that is future work that we have to do, but we at least have I think it's like the start of something great to say that your toll would not pay for something on I-5 if it was collected on I-205. Della?
Yeah, I too wasn't around for the conversations that talked about tolls being eliminated. However, I will say, and I've heard Commissioner Savas talk a lot, I believe, about RUC and other opportunities. And I apologize, Commissioner Savas, if I'm hooking you to something that you haven't spoken on before. But I would say that the toll program is definitely going to. Our plan is to keep it going in order to be able to make investments on the corridor from which it's collected. I would also let folks know that we're working closely with the road user charge group, the Origo group, to make sure that our systems, our back offices, and that work are all forward compatible or can complement each other as the Origo program looks to come further online. So not only do we anticipate that the toll program will carry on over the next couple decades, but that in that time there will be some sort of intermixing or connection between the toll program and the road user charge program, and that we'll be looking for those to be complimentary, and that, you know, a driver would just pay for the trip they take, whether it's through vehicle miles traveled or through the toll program. And Lucinda's group has gone even much farther in making sure that it has interstate operability. So if you go to Washington or California, you have your one account, and you're just seeing your one app that you're managing that has your card on, and you're just paying for the trip you take, wherever that is, and with whoever system that is. And then on the backside, we sort the different boxes that the money goes in as it's collected, so that folks aren't having to have, you know, 5 or 10 apps, or partially in Oregon and partially on the toll program. Looking for all those systems to be compatible with each other and to make it seamless and one size fits all there. So that's all I'd add to that question.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Good. Appreciate the answers. So real quick, one other question from somebody here, and then I think I will have Commissioner Savas chime in here in just a second to provide some additional feedback, since he does come with a lot of history. But Shonda asks, if there is a lot of resistance to tolling, were other options considered?
Oh, I'll take the top part, and Della, you can take the bottom part. So House Bill 2017 actually named bottleneck projects. Rose Quarter was one of those, and so was I-205. They funded Rose Quarter, and there was no funding for I-205. They also said to toll. So did we look at anything else under House Bill 2017? That is what we're working actually under right now, is House Bill 2017. Bella?
No, and I would just also tee you up, Lucinda. I think we've learned a lot from your experience, and in general, when you're setting up a toll program, there usually is a lot of resistance, and a big part of that is that it's really hard for us all to imagine, you know, time savings. But once those systems are up and people see the improvements on the corridor, and, you know, that a commute that used to take an hour and a half is now taking, you know, an hour or 40 minutes, they seem to appreciate it. But I'll defer to Lucinda on that topic there, just to back me up, is make sure I'm not telling stories here.
No, you're not. Actually, I was talking to someone I had worked with when I was at Washington State Department of Transportation and put in tolls at the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Prior to the tolls coming on, if you didn't get there by, I think it was like 3:30 or 4, just so you could get on the, take this little off ramp, you would have to sit. And sometimes your sit would be 40, 50 minutes. That first day of tolls, there was no waiting, and people just drove through. So I would say that, you know, you have to experience a lot, even any place around the country that I've talked about tolls. Tolls don't work unless you experience that time saving, have that reliable trip. And that's an experience. It's really hard to talk about because it really doesn't, saving you 10 minutes 2 years from now is really not something anybody wants to talk about. So a little bit difficult conversation to have for sure. But yes, we're talking about reliability of your trip. Talking about it is one thing, showing it is quite another. So it's very difficult. And resistance to tolls, that I've never seen it any other way.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Lucinda. And so, Paul, I'm going to call on you real quick as a county representative, and all of your deep diving you've done in the transportation sector for so long with JPAC and TPAC and whatever other acronyms there are. I'd love to have your input on some of this right now, if you don't mind. Unmute yourself, please.
Sure. Thank you, Laura. Well, as many, again, thanks to the ODOT team for being here today. And we've had a lot of conversations. And I remember back when we first had the tolling committee meeting right after HB 2017 passed, I sat next to Brendan Finn at the table. And it was a pretty well rounded group, elected officials from each of the 3 counties. And so today, you know, what we have today, pre-COVID, especially, and obviously a lot of that traffic's coming back, but we have a lot of diversion that's happening because of the bottleneck today. So communities like Stafford and not Tualatin, but North Wilsonville, Stafford Road, Willamette Drive into West Lynn, the West Lynn triangle there, and Oregon City, and Gladstone, frankly. People will jet off the freeway to just avoid the backups, whether they're going northbound or southbound, getting to I-5. So we have a lot of traffic accidents, and on some of these rural roads, they result in rollovers because there's a deep culvert and the car rolls off. So we've got a situation today. So the concerns about adding tolling is a very delicate one. I don't know how we're going to do that. I think the NEPA process might reveal some of the aspects or concerns and perhaps highlight them in a way we understand them better. But we got to remember that they're between the town center and I-5 along 205 is 14 miles, and 14 miles of no transit service really, or connectivity between there. So there's no alternatives. And I say that because simultaneous to this tolling discussion, Metro's looking at regional tolling and tolling kind of everything. Maybe that's not on the interstate system. And so that is the purpose there for them, as they state, and they state it very clearly, them being Metro, is that it would be something to advance a behavior change, meaning driver's behavior. So instead of taking your car, you would jump on transit or some alternative. Well, that's great, but along this corridor especially, or in a lot of Clackamas County, there's not much. We don't have really good transit service like we have in our neighbors north in Multnomah County and Portland. So we're already at a disadvantage in that aspect, and without any serious alternatives or investment in this area, we're really putting the Clackamas County residents in a precarious position, all for the sake of, again, either behavior change from the Metro tolling or this revenue generation on the interstate. But I will say this, and maybe just to plant the seed a little bit for some discussion here, I think that's been pointed out by some of the mayors, and not just Clackamas County, but Washington County as well, that I've heard is concerns that, where else in the country do we toll all the lanes? Usually there is one lane tolled. And if people want to get in an express lane and pay for that time savings that Lucinda spoke to, they can pay for that. And those who can't afford it can be in an alternate lane with no tolling, and they can be in bumper to bumper, theoretically. So I just want to put that out there. And the other thing I wrote down here, 1 lane versus 5, regional tolling, diversion, and transit. Yeah, I think I covered it all. So the only thing I will say on transit is that we have a draft transit plan that we've been working on for 3 years. So the draft is just out, and it really speaks to some of the transit deserts of Clackamas County where we don't have much in the way of transit. So you'll be hearing more about that in the next few months, because that's gonna be going for a public process in our planning commission soon. So I'll stop there and let the conversation continue. Thank you.
Okay, so we're at 12:55, but Lucinda and Della, any comments or feedback back to Paul?
Just that real quick on the tolling of all lanes. We are normally, if you put up another lane, you can have one lane not tolled, one lane not tolled. Now, it's 2 general purpose lanes to every 1 tolled lane. And most times, if you'll see it like in Texas and Florida and other places, California, they have 6 lanes, 7 lanes with 2 lanes tolled. And in their bottleneck areas, California has up to 11. I mean, that's kind of crazy. You can't build your way out of this thing, but they are definitely trying. In Texas too. So when you're trying to implement like this congestion pricing, when you think of that, it's almost like saying, I'm going to leave that bottleneck, and for people who don't want to be part of that bottleneck, you can go ahead and pay, versus how about we make it, and I'm going to use the word fair and not equity, because those are 2 different things, and toll all lanes and keep traffic moving, because we're talking about congestion management, not just in 1 lane, but in all lanes throughout the roadway. So if there's a bottleneck we're going to use Rose Quarter, we could use I-205. It would still be a bottleneck if we only tolled 1 lane. the whole ideal is to alleviate the bottlenecks. So the tolling all lanes is the application that alleviates, the variable pricing, tolling all lanes, moves traffic. The other way is you still just have a bottleneck, and then you have a one lane where if you want to pay, you're not in the bottleneck. That doesn't really help. Doesn't help the whole area. So that my 2 cents, Paul. So just my 2 cents.
Yep. And I would add in on the transit piece and on the equity piece. I know that the EMAC is going to be looking at opportunities. Possibly they'll look at all things that are on the table and best practices like possible, waivers and those sorts of things. And as we look to toll all the lanes, then there's more folks who actually have an opportunity to get through there in a shorter period of time if we're able to provide access to the tolling facilities through some of those tools and best practices that folks have found to be helpful in other places. I think the big thing for me that's changed in my 11 years with ODOT is was part of House Bill 2017 and the establishment of the Statewide Statewide Transit Investment Fund, the STIF. And the first real investment in public transit opportunities. And so that's relatively new for ODOT to be managing those kinds of dollars, as well as within the Urban Mobility Office. A big reason Director Strickler and Chair Van Brocklin of the Oregon Transportation Commission set up this office was to provide us with, to provide a group of folks that had the bandwidth to lead strategically in a lot of these areas that the agency hasn't been able to focus on. And one of the big goals of the Urban Mobility Office will be to stand shoulder to shoulder with our transit leaders, to be true partners, to be technically competent in the transit arenas, to provide some ideas and thoughts around funding opportunities, and to, through the toll program, really lean into opportunities to improve and enhance transit as a complement to the toll program. So we stand with you, Commissioner Savas, and looking into those opportunities. And I know that I've been talking with Karen Criswell, who's our Public Works, Public Transit Division Administrator. I have talked with her a lot about this toll project and the transit challenges in the Clackamas County area already. And we're excited to roll up our sleeves and look for opportunities to do things differently as it relates to the toll program, transit partnerships and opportunities there, as well as while we tee up our regular construction improvement projects. So appreciate your championship in that area, Commissioner Savas, and look forward to working with you and others in that area closer on how we can help improve the transit access in the Clackamas County area.
Great. And I'm gonna, since we're at 1 o'clock, and I'm gonna say thank you, Della. We do look forward to, and I don't want to overspeak for Paul, but we do look forward to some additional information as it comes. We do look forward to you having the extra partners at the table to make sure that Clackamas County is actually being serviced in the need that, in the way that they need to be, rather than having another, for lack of better terms, metro indicate,